Will the town meeting members please take their seats? And precinct chairman will take a count. Now, all I need is to take a pencil out.
Hi, sweetie.
$7.44.
No. In the case of 41, actually before the election, the town council sent an email.
Precinct 1.
We want to dismiss 41.
How many? 5.
The vote at town meeting would be advisory anyway. You guys can change it any way you want to. You don't even have to hold a public hearing. So
Precinct.
no,
Yes.
it was just a
Precinct 2.
before we replaced it as town.
Precinct 2 is 18. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 16. 16. Please keep it down. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 16. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 11. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 17. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 15. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 11. Does Precinct 1 have any change in that? You got it up to 8. That's the number I got. There are 112 town meeting members present. I do know, I'll give a hint that please hold on to your attendance check-ins for a little bit while in case anybody comes in late. The quorum is 78. This meeting is ready to convene. Will you please rise and join me in saluting the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Make a request that if you have cell phones, please don't let them. We do have some material that has been put out here. Namely, some of the information that was requested at the last meetings, corrections in Article 10, and some things on Article 21, and the budget information, salaries. That information will be taken up at our next session.
Can I just make a comment on that?
Yes, Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. There's 3 items in your packet, as the moderator has just indicated. Article 10, which is the revolving accounts. You notice there's a new column in there called authorization. So based on a review of the document by town council, that's been added, and the language was updated to make sure that any residual balances from the prior year are going to roll forward. So with the 3 changes to the articles on conservation and board of health, et cetera, they felt that they needed to update the language, so now that'll become part of the living language. The last item is salaries. So last Wednesday, you were distributed the 2015 salaries. This year, today, you've got the 2014 history. So, and just so that you know, that history, I don't know, took 40-plus hours to reconstruct. And the reason is that the 2014 history in last year's book didn't have the salaries that were approved in collective bargaining, because those are up in a separate account, and afterwards they get rolled down into the operating departments, and you've got to reflect that. So there's a huge amount of work undertaken just to take that into consideration. We'll do a little bit more on Wednesday. I think if we get into the budgets on Wednesday, which is what I'm anticipating, we'll just talk a little bit about the genesis of how this all worked, a couple of PowerPoint slides, 5-7 minutes, and we'll take any questions, okay?
On a brief recap, so we try to understand where we're going tonight and what we're not going, or whatever. Seems that we're, last evening, or last Wednesday evening, we convened at 7:55 p.m. with 128 members present. Based on a standing count, we had 130 people voting. That was the only one time we voted. The action of last meeting began at 8:18, and we just handles Articles 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, and we tabled action going on in Article 27, and just for some of these articles, 13, 14, 15, and 16, were tabled to near the end of the warrant, and then mostly, and Article 23 and Article 21 were tabled. Article 21 was tabled to the 14th, and we still have on the 14th, still scheduled, is Articles 58 and Articles 33, and the Community Preservation Project, also Article 32, because that does go together. And Article 57, I've received communications that Article 57 would like to be moved till Monday, and I'm just going to ask for consensus vote. Does this body agree to allow Article 57 be moved to the 19th? I heard it, so a motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. The 19th. We had a change in sequence, capital outlay articles. We're doing school capital outlay. We will have an announcement on that following our progress with the capital outlays things. They make more sense. I know there was a request last week for free cash numbers. Do we have an actual printout of that we can have in our records? On what? There. Once again, I make the warning. If it's official business, make sure it's in here. That's what I figured. That's why somebody is going out front to find it. Okay. Mrs. Frankel, before we begin.
Mr. Moderator, I would like to make a request, if I may. I was not a town meeting member last year when you instituted the 30-hour rule, but I would like you to consider this on your 30-hour rule for new information coming. We had an example of this occur with the capital outlay, Article 27 last week. And the maker of that article and the petitioner of that article is the Board of Selectmen. The FinCom decided what they were going to support and what they weren't going to support, but the article itself was inserted by and supported by the Board of Selectmen and the town manager. When an amended article, an amendment to the recommendation given by FinCom is made by the maker of the article, the petitioner of the article, I don't believe that that should require the 30-hour rule and for us to have to sit back and wait 30 hours. Essentially, with that kind of a sequence of events, we could possibly never finish town meeting.
Could I address that
But-
issue, Mrs. Franklin?
Yes, one second.
Because
The-
I'll explain that.
Well, I
Exactly the
understand. I understand your reasoning in particular instances. My point is, when the amendment is coming from and being supported by the original maker of the article, I don't think that this body, unless they're not given a funding source, or they're not given a proper reference or whatever, I think this body should be able to debate that issue then and there and decide what this body wants to do. I would like you to consider that.
All right, I will give a brief explanation. On the capital outlay, I allowed that motion to come on because everything was met for the reason why we normally table. This was nothing new. It was something that was in the original warrant article. It was a subject that there was a public hearing on, and this body does have a right to question the decision or the recommendation of the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is an advisory committee of town meeting. That doesn't mean that theirs is the last and final vote. And that's what this body is here for. If I agree absolutely that if you don't have all the other material or introducing something new that was not in that article, the 30-hour rule definitely applies. However, I did receive this motion earlier in the afternoon, and I used my good right to decide whether we should put it on at that time, and that's why we did allow it. I did allow it to come on. But normally, the reason for doing this and having that 30-hour rule is it takes time to prepare this material. Some of you wonder why sometimes I'm coming in here very close to the last minute. It's because somebody else earlier in the day proceeds to try to bend those rules. There's some discretion that we do have to use, and if we're coming close to the end of a town meeting, and town meeting has already discussed something that has been tabled, then it's no need to really wait 30 hours if it's brought up within the discussion and what has been brought in. But we like to give you the opportunity to see what is handed to us. We've gone many, many years with 11th hour motions coming in, and that is unfair to you. So that's why we adopted that rule last year. It has helped a lot, but there's always with some of the new things, especially this capital outlay method of putting articles in the warrant. It is intended to make you have a kind of clearer scope of how much money we're spending on the various capital outlay items. And I was quite surprised I received a copy of another town's, nearby town's warrant, and they're actually doing the same thing with capital outlay articles. So, on that, I do need a motion to take off the table Article 27. Now, this technically opens everything up on Article 27, but at this time, we were still discussing an amendment to Article 27. When did we take that off the table? I gotta find my page in here. Okay. We took off table. 8 o'clock, that's not too bad. Now, we are still on the, all those in favor of taking off the table, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Just. Yes. Mr. Murphy.
I would like a point of clarification on this article. Are we going to vote on each step individually, or as one group, take it or leave it type scenario?
Well, what it is this particular motion, if you recall, there was a main motion on that which consolidated everything in the recommendations from the Finance Committee. That's the same as we do on the whole budget. We have a main motion, then we go and mess it all up, and at the end we correct it. In this case, on the capital outlay, most of those things have essentially the same specifications for borrowing authority. So what we'll do on this evening, and this is a very key point, because 27C1 was not recommended, we're going to take a separate vote on that as if we were making an amendment. And if the amendment flies, then that will, if the motion flies to fund it, we have taken that vote. And if it doesn't, it's over with, and the recommendation of the Finance Committee stays until we go through the whole thing. So it's just like we do the budget. We come down, we challenge it. If there's a change, we vote on it and go forward.
Would it be inappropriate, and correct me if I'm wrong, for me to make a motion right now that we take items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and vote on those as separate items?
You can do that.
I would like to
All
make
right.
that motion.
Just so that we, as we go along, after we get all through the debate on
After all the discussion,
Okay,
after the discussion is complete, when you go to vote, we take these items and we vote on them separately.
okay. Now you understand, every one of those has to be a standing count with his ball.
By all means.
Okay. Mr. Cohn,
I made a motion, somebody seconded. Do we vote on that?
yeah. All right, this is a procedural motion that he's requesting. The motion was to take it, we voted to take it off the table. That's what we're talking about right now. I haven't asked for that yet. They want to know about the procedures. I'm still waiting to do the next part, but you did make a motion on procedures.
Yes.
And that under this, that I'll restate the motion, that we vote each section of this budget, this capital outlay article individually and record the same.
Correct.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? No. I'm going to declare it a vote.
Thank you.
Now, on the motion to take Article 27, ID 27, item C1, the motion, Mr. Cohen, take it off the table. Is this the amended one here? Whatever, the motion that you had to put an item. Is there any question further? Mr. Dolinsky, not on the merits.
No, not at all. Just to try to clear something up, George Dolinsky, Precinct 2. The original motion made by the chair of the Finance Committee was to appropriate $1,627,770. Doesn't that motion have to be changed? Or
It will be, that's what I mentioned before. When we
Okay.
get through, as we do it
But
individually,
that was the total motion for the total amounts, and now you're adding 250,000. Doesn't that
that
part
will
of the
have to be,
motion?
remember what we do with the budget?
I don't remember.
We
from
make a
yesterday.
main motion just like that.
All right, so
and
the
then we
main
go through
motion will
the-
have to be changed at the end.
That's correct.
Okay.
Then we lock it up both ways. All those in favor of taking, is this on taking off the table? No. All right. I didn't hear a vote for those who want to take item C1, fire rescue, off the table. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? No, the motion carries.
Moderator, point of information.
Yes.
All those articles, for all the items in this article, that the Finance Committee did not recommend, for all the articles,
It's,
for all the items in this article that the Finance Committee did not recommend, do we now need a piece of paper with a new motion for all of those?
no, you have
There's no motion in the
one for
book
one of
form.
those items.
Huh?
This small piece of paper is just for that one item that was,
Because it was disapproved. Now, all the other ones, well, let's just say not recommended. Now, all these other ones don't need a small piece of paper with a motion on it that were not recommended?
if somebody wants to do it, yes, but
Okay.
okay? So in this case, we've had enough time to look at that, and I would recommend, if you're going to do something of that sort, be prepared. Mr. Anzavino, on the,
John Anzavino, Precinct 4. Just as a question, I just don't know why you didn't allow for discussion on the previous motion to take these all separately. You had a motion, a second.
because
You
we-
never asked for a discussion on the motion.
but generally,
I just want to point that out because you already have a motion on the floor. You keep making motion after motion, and the main motion is out the window. Anyway, my point on the motion to amend Article 27, it would be my opinion that this is a motion to amend that article, and that this piece of paper is Article 27, because that's what it says at the top. Motion to amend Article 27.
And the
This does not say add it to the main motion. It doesn't give new totals. It's my opinion, and I'd like that to go through council. And I would like to know if this is actually the motion that took place of 27 that was read by the chairman of the Finance Committee. That's my first question.
well, according to my records, if you read the first line, and I know that's very confusing, Mr. Anzavino, the very first line, it says to amend motion for Article 27, ID 27, item C1 fire rescue. It's only to that one item.
And I read it differently, and that's why I'd like an opinion on it. The title of it says, and the way it was put forth was to amend the motion for Article 27.
Well, I'm going, as the person who decides on that, is there anybody else confused at what we're doing? Then I would declare that what I stated was, this is an amendment to that article when it will come up total. So you're free now just to talk on first, right now.
That's fine. If that's what your ruling is, you should have written this a little clearer, because that's not what the motion says.
I didn't write it.
The second question is, we just put a new ambulance into service. Now they want another new ambulance, and I believe a previous speaker had indicated the shocks were bad and it smelled. Can we not fix that ambulance for less than $250,000? That's my question.
Does somebody have an answer to that? Yes. Mr. Cohn. Or the chief?
It's a little more involved than just a little bit of a smell and shock absorbers.
Well, that was the explanation given the other night, Mr. Dollar.
That did not come from me, sir.
I know it didn't.
When we look at the replacement of an ambulance, we look at two basic categories, our fixed expenses, our variable expenses. Just to let someone know, the fixed expenses are outright purchases, our depreciation, our insurances. Next, we look at fuel, the variable expenses, the fuel, maintenance, repairs, tires, oils, accidents, everything that goes along with operating a fleet piece of equipment. At this time, that happens to be a 2005 International with 9,597 hours on it. That equates, our hours we have to equate because of all the idle time for an ambulance, that equates to 297,910 miles. Current repair totals for that ambulance, and these were available for the Finance Subcommittee when I met with them as well. I did present them in an envelope. They didn't even open up the envelope to look at it. That would be $53,932. What we do is we plot the depreciation of the vehicle. We look at the purchase price, we look at the trade-in price. We graph that. Then we look at our repair costs. We graph that. When those two intersect, we have to start making some hard decisions. This all goes along with also how it treats the patient. We have to look at how this ambulance rides with the patient. And it just popped into my head, one thing I want to clear up right away. Someone approached me a couple days ago and said I made a statement at a Finance Committee meeting that this wasn't a priority piece of equipment. Never happened. Never came out of my mouth. I reviewed every one of the meetings in a tape. I don't know if it came out of someone else's mouth behind the table that I couldn't hear, but it never came out of my mouth. And you can go on Smack TV, you go on StoughtonTV.com, review all the tapes like I did. Never happened. So I wanted to dispel that rumor right away. Our ambulance number 2 happens to be a 2006 International with 9,288 hours. That equates to 278,640 miles on the engine. I'm sorry, 9,288 hours. And then, of course, we have the new one we did take delivery of and was on the road last November. That currently has 720 hours, which equates to 21,600 miles on the road since beginning of first week in November, 13. You have to understand something. If we order it, say we get this approval for the ambulance tonight, we still can't go out to bid on it till July. It takes almost a year to get one of these ambulances. We don't walk down to the local Chevy dealership and say, I'll take the red and white one right there, and all of a sudden we hop in it and away we go. It just doesn't work that way. This is a long process. We have to go through specs. We have to go through bidding. We have to go through procurement. We have to go request for quotes, request for proposals. This is not something that gets done overnight. This is in preparation for what's going to happen down the road for us. We're behind the 8 ball now because of decisions that were made a few years back where they kept putting off the purchase of an ambulance. We look at our 5-year capital plan, which happens to be a state statute. I know the town's charter only says a 3-year plan, but by state statute, we have to have a 5-year plan. But the 5-year plan keeps getting ignored. We're going to run into this again and again and again unless we stick to a plan and move forward. Right now, I'm going to look for an engine next year, a $550,000 engine, and you want to throw a $250,000 ambulance on top of that next year? Everyone's going to be angry out there, and I don't blame you. We need to make some moves, and we need to make some moves now. This is why I was upset that this was not put in the article to go forward. The other comment was made about us not staffing it all the time. You're absolutely right. It's not staffed 100% of the time. It's staffed approximately 63% of the time. And then we have to rely on mutual aid. But once we empty our station, which happens, I was going to get that, 535 times last year, completely dumped the station, emergency call back. Those gentlemen coming in off duty, man that other ambulance. We go 3 deep in ambulance. We do have 3 ambulances right now, but one's constantly a spare. We have to be up and running. I can't put off a road construction job for a day while I get an ambulance fix. No disrespect for John, the Public Works. I can't grab a can of ether and spray it under there and wait for it to start up for an hour or 2 while it warms up. We need equipment. We need equipment to respond right away, and that's why I went for this ambulance. Thank you.
So the explanation given the other night, based on what you just said, wasn't accurate.
I'm not sure who gave
Well,
that explanation.
I just said a previous speaker had given some reasons. He didn't go through the reasons you just gave. That's why I asked if it could be fixed for a lot less.
Please come down. If we stay. Mrs. Colburn.
Through you, Mr. Moderator, to the Fire Chief. Chief Darliff, could you repeat, I'm sorry, I was conferring with my colleagues. Can you repeat what you said about something delivered to me that I didn't open? I just want to make sure I understand what you're referring to.
This was at our Finance Subcommittee meeting. It was put on the round table in front of us to show you the repair slips for our ambulance that I look to replace.
The repair slips, okay. Because you did give us backup for the article. I just want to, it is in the book. Not the repair slips, but on page 174 is the backup I received for the article, which basically states it's a 2004 International with engine hours of 9,570 times 25 equals 239,250 with road mileage of 107,811. So I just want to verify that backup was in the book. Okay, so you're talking about the repair slips?
Yes, this was in an envelope that was put right in front of yourself and Peter Brown and Peter Ventresco.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Coleman.
Eric Coleman, Precinct 5, through you to the chief. Is this new ambulance that we're looking at something that can be separated? That is, the chassis can be separated from, the back part can be separated from the chassis?
That is my overall plan. I learned this from the Cape vehicles where they do an extraordinary amount of miles, road miles, but the boxes stay in great shape. And we've even looked at some of the ones we turn in where the boxes are the back part of the ambulance. I'm sorry, the chassis would be the drivetrain and the wheels. And when we saw that they were doing that and saving approximately $100,000 per vehicle, and there's only one manufacturer out there that's offering this program right now, and that's the last ambulance we took delivery of has that program, and I look to go forward and do it in the next ambulance purchase as well.
It sounds very good. We could be saving a lot of money next time. It would be a lot easier next time. Thank you.
Mr. Guerin. Mr. Guerin is a member of the Finance Committee.
Jim Guerin, Precinct 6, Finance Committee. In our meetings with the departments regarding this one article, no, let me start away. When we receive these articles from the different departments for replacement of equipment, we kind of treat them as a wish list of all the things that they would like to have. quite often they put down things that are kind of off in the future. So what we do in each and every, when we're talking with the superintendent of each and every department, we ask them for a list of their priorities. And typically, this year, as in other years, what we did is we vote the top 2 or 3 priorities in every department. And this is to keep finances in order in this town. We could vote down this, every time we get one of these, we could vote them down, and we'd have this town in the poorhouse in no time. So let's be clear about this thing here. Each and every department head was asked their priorities. We voted this thing in accordance with those priorities. Thank you.
Mr. Hill.
Could I just address the previous speaker
Oh,
first?
yes, please do.
He is correct in that statement, and that's also asked of us at the subcommittee meeting with the Finance Committee. And this, I believe, was my 3rd year with them, and I always tell them, I don't want to prioritize them. They're all a priority. I wouldn't be asking for them if we didn't need them.
Chief, how many vehicles have we taken possession of in the last 5 years? A new ladder,
Ambulances?
a new ambulance, a new ladder, at least 2 engines?
Yeah. The latter was with a federal grant.
Yeah, okay. I guess my
2
point is,
ambulance-
I think we're keeping up. And in my, if when department heads come to us and ask us to replace capital equipment on the scale of $250,000, we'd expect to see some summarized documentation that says, this vehicle's offline X% of time. We weren't able to respond to X number of calls because this item was offline. This item is unsafe, it won't meet state standards, or it has failed a state inspection. If you gave us an envelope full of bills or receipts, it's not our job to go through and add those up. So we, as Mr. Guerin indicated, we really try to figure out how much money we got to spend. And we've got a pretty good formula where we're taking 3 to 5% of total gross revenue and matching it against what we're retiring in debt, and try and come up with a formula so that we can pass what we think the town's immediate priorities are. We don't hit them all at the same time, but we try to get the immediate priorities. So that's what the decision was based on. And I don't think we heard anything that was compelling telling us that we had a vehicle that was endangering people's safety or their lives, or wasn't fit for operation. So, and if we missed that, then I apologize. But I don't think I heard that, so.
Mr. Souza.
Could I answer a question for the subcommittee? Did anyone go down, this is the second most expensive item on the list. Did anyone ever go down to look at this vehicle, get in the vehicle, and drive in the back of this vehicle? Okay, when I was on the Finance Committee, I did. Not all, but the heavy items. Thursday morning, I went to the fire station about 10 o'clock in the morning. There were about 8 men there, 2 ambulances gone, and there was a full stack for the 3rd ambulance was there. I was fortunate enough to meet the mechanic, and I asked him a few questions. The outside of this ambulance looks like it's a brand new piece of equipment. Amazing. I said, there's something wrong with this? He says, yeah, we have compression problems. This thing does not always start. He says there's a rebuilt engine in there. It's 9 years old, and usually these things are replaced 5 to 7 years. I called Fallon Ambulance Service because I have a friend that works there, and he confirmed that 90% of his fleet is, and they're a huge, huge company, confirmed that they replace their majority of their ambulances 5 to 7 years. I also asked him if I could go for a ride in the back. I told him I couldn't do it. I came back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And by the way, that day there was a third crew there to back up the ambulance. I guess the station was empty because I saw an engine come back and I saw 2 ambulances come back. And I waited to see if the 3rd crew, an hour later, the 3rd crew went home because they were on overtime. They come in an hour. I went out in this thing and I sat in the back. First of all, I got in an ambulance. The ambulance was spotless on the back of the ambulance. Spotless. And I was amazed what was in that ambulance. Of everything that they had, I'd be more than comfortable to be in there. The question is, when he took, and I'll tell you the route he took, 139 to Page Street to, what's that, Old Maple Street, probably the most bumpiest streets he could find, he took me on. And believe me, I was not sitting in the seat where the EMT works on the patient. I sat on the side, and a couple of times my butt went up a few times. I wouldn't even want to be in this ambulance, because if anyone was going to put an IV in me, I don't even know how he could do this. I got off, when he got down to Old Maple Street, I asked if I could go in the front seat. The ambulance is old. It needs replacement. We talk about we want an image of the town. Well, I think the image of the town is to put your ambulance on and make sure we have the proper protection. There's 3 mobile fleets in this town: the police department, the public works department, and the fire department. And if they don't have the equipment, and by the way, the last pumper we bought was 4 years ago. Usually, when I was on the FinCom, it was $100,000, $125,000. We used to start replacing these pumpers. Of course, they were a lot cheaper at that time. But we are talking next year of $850,000 to replace a pumper. We have all these surveys, we have all these plans, and we don't do anything with them. We've had that center of town revitalized 10 times, but I'm getting back to the fire thing. If you don't do it this year, you're sure going to do it next year. And by the way, most of those calls come out of Ponkapong, where that spare fire engine or the ambulance is. That's an 8 to 10 minute ride to come to Stoughton. And just remember, and one thing we do, we have our engines there that are there about to transport. Avon is about, just look at the delivery times of getting an ambulance here. I strongly urge you to pass this thing and bring this fleet up to thing, because next year we're only going to keep spending and spending. We bought the police cruisers, now let's buy the ambulance and stop it, and let's get this thing done. Thank you.
Mr. Souza.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, everybody. I am a truck driver. I drive a truck. I understand what this means. I know as a selectman now, you look at figures and our taxpayers, does it hurt us? Yes, it does. But I'm not considering myself a first responder, not like the fire department or the police, but we respond to fatals on 93 and the mass highway roads. Sometimes we're there before the fire department shows up, blocking the roads and everything else. And our concern is when we have to start those trucks and get out there in the middle of the winter and everything else, we get to those trucks, we want to turn those keys, we want those trucks to go. If it takes somebody's life to lose, understand, you want to lose somebody's life? Your child, your father, your mother? Tell me, people, I understand it's crazy, but the chief is trying to do a great job here. We're going to try to switch boxes and everything else. It's tough. We're going through a lot of change. We need schools, we need everything. I understand all that. Maybe we got to look at people that they hire. Maybe they hire too many people. We got to maybe tighten our belts, and people understand that. But do the right decision. Thank you.
Mrs. McNeil. Yes, you want to? You didn't have that far to go. Okay. Mr. Hanson.
Just a little bit of clarification, maybe from Chief Doloff. This $250,000, is that for a new chassis in the old box, or is it for a complete ambulance?
This is a complete ambulance, chassis and box. There's only one manufacturer that currently makes it. We refer to it as a plug and play. You can just unplug the box, bring a new chassis in. And that's only been going on for maybe approximately 5 years now with that manufacturer. And that's our goal, to be able to save money in the long run, to reuse the box and just get a new chassis, because that's the part that seems to fail us
first. Was that the company up in Minnesota?
No, sir. I think they're out of Florida. Yeah.
If it wasn't them, I'm just kind of familiar with a product out of Minnesota because I worked on them when I was up in New Hampshire. Would it be in our best interest to, like we do on the cruises, every 3 years, we replace 1/3 of the cruisers, or some ratio like that? Might that be something we can do in the future, or not too distant future, with the ambulances? If they have a predicted lifespan of, say, 5 years, takes a year to get them, or they're 6 years and they take a year to get them, so at the 5th year, every 5 years, we consider replacing an ambulance. Is that something that's doable in the future?
Originally, we did a capital plan, and that's how we would try and space them out. We actually did a 10-year capital plan to space out the replacement of equipment. But through certain decisions made by certain boards, they don't go forward with feeling, oh, it's time to replace it.
But if we did just a chassis, a glider kit chassis, we're talking saving $100,000?
That's the latest quote I got. It's about $100,000 savings.
Okay. I think it would probably be in order to perhaps spend that $100,000 and then try to do the capital outlay cycle and planning, but I don't know if that should be in the form of a motion or.
We're not at that point in time with these particular chassis. The chassis itself will be about $150,000. The box is about $100,000.
Okay.
So down the line with this manufacturer, because they happen to make their ambulance that way to be able to replace them. Our last ambulance we just purchased that went into service November of last year. That one was manufactured that way, so we'll be able to look at doing that with that one. Moving forward, that is my plan, to purchase all the ambulance to have that option, so to be able to save money, because it's costly. There's a big difference between $150,000 and $250,000.
Yeah. It's more than I make in a week. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. McNeil.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. To the Chair of the FinCom, I don't know quite how to put it, but to have ambulances fail and not for them to have missed calls, that's people's lives. I mean, if that's what it takes for us to get new ambulances and that's the criteria in order to think that we need one. I mean, my son this year, I can't imagine if the ambulance didn't start or wasn't able to bring him, or we're going to break down on the way to the hospital. I think that's an absurd way to decide whether we need a new ambulance or not, is to wait to see how many times it breaks down and doesn't work. I mean, the chief has a plan. I mean, when our families need to have the ambulance there, we don't want to be having missed calls. We want our kids, our husbands, our parents to be picked up and brought to the hospital as fast as possible, not have to wait because they couldn't get there. And I think having a plan, I mean, that's one of the things we've been talking all along about, different things within this town, is we need to keep moving forward. And the more we put things off, the more we're going to have expenses later. I mean, to think that you would wait till have missed calls in order to now decide this is the time to get an ambulance, I just don't understand it.
Mr. Moderator?
Mr. Hill.
I guess our point, Mrs. McNeil, was that, well, through you, Mr. Moderator, to the previous speaker, protocols. I guess our point was we weren't provided with any information that there was a need to replace this ambulance. So whether it was in repair or out of repair, I don't think we've seen a 5-year capital plan. We don't have any evidence to say we should replace it, so why should we? And that's what we were taking as we're not looking for, if it fails 3 times, replace it. We're looking for, this vehicle is not fit to transport people, we can't risk it. We understand that, and that's why in the last 5 years we've replaced 3 frontline vehicles, and I believe one of the pumpers was a replacement for a backup. So there is a plan. I'm not sure that I've seen it, but I know that we are moving forward with buying very expensive pieces of equipment as needed, and we just didn't see that there was a need demonstrated here. We know one way or another. We know what the age is and we know what the miles are, but from what we know, it was working fine. It's got a rebuilt engine. I don't know what year that was put in. It wasn't 9 years ago because the thing's only 10 years old. So that's what we're trying to base our information on, is facts. So we're not looking to find that it's failed X number of times before we decide. We take the priority of the residents of the town very seriously, and this is an important item. And that's why the Finance Committee, along with the town meeting, voted to add 3 more people to the fire department the year before last. So that's all I can say.
Mr. McCrisky.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This just comes down to asset management. My full-time job, as some people know, they've called me the Feng Hua guy. I go out and I work with commercial motor vehicle companies, and we talk about asset management, risk management, age of vehicles, and I've never seen, I've been involved a lot of years, and when the chief told me, took me around the station and was talking about equipment, he showed me the reason he had vehicles spec'd out the way they were. He knew the replacement on the years. He did it based on engine hours for municipal apparatus, police cars, trash trucks, sewer and water trucks. It's more of the engine hours because they don't do a lot of miles in the town. And this just basically does come down to, I believe we should stand with the chief in his efforts to keep the fleet modern, to keep it that there's minimal amounts of parts that are needed because the vehicles are spec'd out the same. So you're not worrying about 3 different engines and 3 different pieces of apparatus. The engines are the same, the brakes are the same with the ambulance. So I would stand with the chief when it comes to his apparatus. He knows it better than we do. And I think we should stand with the chief on his efforts to keep the fleet up to date, to replace it when he knows how long he's got before he can get the new vehicle, and some of the problems he deals with now. Insurance companies look at that, folks. And that's what I do with trucks and buses. Is you go in, you look at the age of the fleet, you look at the replacement, you look at the wear and tear, you look how long it'll take to get another one in, and the potential risk as well of it breaking down, causing a collision, an accident, or worse, or a fatality. This is nothing more than the same thing. It's our vehicles as the town of Stoughton, and I would encourage all town meeting representatives to support the fire chief in his efforts. Thank you.
Mrs. Anzavino.
Barbara Anzavino, Precinct 4. Okay, this is, when I checked into things, the way that an ambulance should be is it should last about 10 years. If we are going to last 10 years, it should be a frontliner for a number of years, and then it should be a replacement. We have 3 ambulances. That means we want to get them on a rotation of about every 3 years. What happened in 2006, 2007 was that we bought an ambulance at one point in time, and it was like we picked it up secondhand. And then we ended up replacing 2 ambulances immediately after each other. And that's why we're in the position that we're in now, because we replaced those 2 ambulances one year, and then we bought another one immediately after, because that one was failing. That one was costing us something like $20,000 a year to keep it running. It seemed like the fire department was coming constantly asking the Finance Committee for money to repair it. So now we're in this position, and what we would like to do is simply put it off for a year so that we can get them onto a better cycle. So we're on that cycle where they're being constantly replaced every 3 or 4 years, 2.5, somewhere in that way. But it's silly to take an ambulance that we bought in November and to say, you're going to be the ambulance that we use 65% of the time. We have 3 ambulances. One runs all the time. One runs 65% of the time. We have a backup ambulance if these 2 ambulances fail. There's a 4th ambulance that's available from Norfolk County that we can use if these other 2 ambulances are out of the way. We have mutual aid. This is something that we just would like you to put off for a year so that we can get them on the cycle, the same way that we did for the police cars. Remember when we were replacing the police cars every 4 years and we said, please, can we get 5 years out of these cars? So we kind of put them on that nice little cycle, and now we have a nice little cycle that we're replacing the police cars. We would like to do the same thing for the ambulances. So if possible, I'm asking you to defeat this year, and then next year, believe me, I will be standing there with that fire chief saying, let's get this ambulance, let's get it now.
Mr. Gator.
Dennis Gator, Precinct 3. I have to support the chief on this one. I think that if we put this off, and we're just going to create a bigger mess next year. Unfortunately, I had the privilege, I guess, to be a patient in this ambulance. And I didn't realize it until just recently, just now, or in the last couple of meetings, that before that ambulance left, when they picked me up, they put the IV in my arm. Now, during that ride, there was no way that anybody was getting an IV in my arm. No way. They got it in before we left, but I swear that it would be pure luck and great talent if they got the IV in me while we were underway. Thank you.
Mr. Curtin.
Okay. Within the recent past, I've been on duty, and twice I've had members in quarters. I've had ambulance calls. 2 ambulances out, ambulance 1's there. I had box alarm people back to staff it. Didn't start. So now there's a time of them trying to get it started to where they call back to the dispatcher and say, we can't get it started, start somebody else. That can take anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes. Chief said, if you wait 1 year, it actually equates to 2 years. Like he said, he's got things that he has to go through. He doesn't get the money until July 1st or July 15th, whenever it's appropriated. Then he has to wait. He has to go through speccing it. Then it has to go through procurement and everything else. So this ambulance doesn't come out until next year. We've seen that with everything. The community ambulance that the previous speaker spoke about, I agree, it's there sometimes. But it's also shared with about 6 or 7 other communities that if they grab it first, it's not there for us. We've had times where we have more guys in quarters and we have ambulances to staff to take care of you people, to take care of your family, to take care of your friends. So I ask you. Oh, and as for the previous speaker who were talking about a smell in the back of the ambulance, I don't know who said it, it wasn't me. I talked more of people getting sick because of the ride.
It was absolutely you.
I said smell?
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
No, I don't believe so, but, yeah? Okay, I apologize. There wasn't a smell issue, it was a ride issue. But I ask you, please, support what the chief's asking for. He doesn't ask for a lot. He asks for what he needs. He doesn't put fluff into his budget. Please support him and get this new ambulance.
Mr. Lurie.
David Lurie, Precinct 6. It sounds to me like everybody has consensus in the room except for FinCom on the subject of whether or not we should get funding for this ambulance. When I heard that from the chairman that there was going to be a need to see more information as to what was actually wrong, what is the danger of having an ambulance and why it needs to be repaired. We then had a follow-up from FinCom saying that it was more about the rotation. It was, gee, we'd like to get a nice even set of years between ambulance 1, 2, and 3 across a 10-year term. So which is it? Is it a problem of not getting enough information from the chief, or is it that the cycle doesn't kind of work within the kind of planning that the FinCom group believes is necessary? So that's on one hand. Secondly, when you look at if you look at what the chief is actually saying, is the way I understand it, is that the hours of use in the vehicle are what matter. It's not about how many years the vehicle is operating. It's how many in-use hours are taking place. Whether it's in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, how many hours are being used. My concern, and it comes back to those things in which I think, based on the group that comes together to look at planning for this town, we're always looking for things around safety and image. Well, this is a safety issue. The whole town comes together on the subject of safety and image. Well, what kind of hours are these ambulances operating under? Are they operating good hours or unsafe hours? It's a matter of hours, quality hours on the road versus decrepit use of these machines in those hours. It's about how they get used in the hours, not whether or not it works neatly into a cycle. So I implore the town meeting members to vote in favor of funding this ambulance so that the hours of use are good hours and not just working within the convenience of whether or not they're in a cycle that's kind of nice and easy to kind of fit. That's my opinion, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mr. Rock.
Hi, everybody. John Rock, Precinct 2, member of the FinCom Committee. I guess I'm a little tired of all this FinCom bashing that's going on. You know, it's a volunteer position. We spent many hours, many meetings open to the public, considering these items. This one was hotly debated. I think the vote was 7-7. So it's not like we immediately dismissed it and didn't consider it, and that goes for all the requests for capital purchases. We would like to fund every request for new equipment. We're replacing some DPW vehicles that are like from the 1980s or 1970s. I have no problem with replacing the ambulance, but we have two that are about the same age. Are we going to replace both of them? I mean, using that logic, we should replace both of them now. Again, I have no problem replacing the ambulance. It's not a huge amount of money. But please, stop with the FinCom bashing. I think we did our duty. You know, we vote things as we see priorities. We love to vote for everything. But we wouldn't be doing our job. So that's what I have to say.
Mr. Hill.
I'd just like this body to be clear that we didn't vote for this because there was no case made. Yes, there are all kinds of factors that go into replacing a unit or an ambulance, in this case, an ambulance for the fire department, but there was not enough of a case presented, a compelling case to say that we should spend $250,000 today to replace an arm. There was no indication that it was failing or out of order or anything. So I understand it's a desire and understand it's part of a 5-year capital. I don't think we've seen that. And we're happy to take all of that into consideration, but the case wasn't made.
Mrs. Iacopucci.
To piggyback on that, the case has been made now, so I think we should vote on this. I ask that we move the question.
That's to cut off debate. All those in favor of cutting off debate, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries to cut off debate. Since this is a borrowing article, it will be a standing count. All those in favor, please rise, and the chairman take a count. Yes. I have called for the vote. All those in favor, please rise. And I'll restate the motion. No, I made it very clear when Mr. Dolinsky came up and asked if we voted for these things individually. Right. I will repeat the motion. The motion is this: to amend the motion for Article 27, ID 27, item C1, fire rescue, to appropriate the sum of $250,000 for the purchase of a new ambulance to replace ambulance number 1. And to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $250,000 under Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 9, or any other enabling authority. It is only on that item in 27. All those in favor, please rise. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 8. Precinct 2. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 17. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 11. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 13. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 9. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 17. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 12. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 9. All those in favor, please rise and cheer. I mean opposed. It's very early in the day. That's on those voting no. Precinct 1.
5 opposed.
5. Precinct 2. Precinct 2 is 3. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 3. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 6. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 0. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 1. Precinct 7. 3 and 1 abstention. That's in precinct 7. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 2. Any number you want me to repeat?
I won't do it. I won't do it.
The motion carries. 96 yes, 23 no, 1 abstain. That is certainly more than a 2/3.
Thank you, town meeting members.
Now, the rest of this Article 27 is still open for discussion and debate. Even though we're going item by item, is there any further discussion on any of the other items? Mr. Coleman.
Eric Coleman, Precinct 5. Due to the lack of discussion on any of these other issues, may we vote the whole article at this point after adding the
No,
250,000? Oh, there is.
Because
All right, go ahead.
I'd given a chance
No,
to do that.
I withdraw that.
Mr. DeFelice.
Mr. Moderator, if we have questions on anyone on this list, we should ask all those questions now. For example, if I have questions on Cedar Hill, if I have a question, say recreation, should I ask all the questions now?
Yeah, then we won't have to listen to you anymore.
All right.
Oh, okay?
Yeah. I used to like him.
Mr. DeFelice.
Thank you. I'd like to start on the items for the A1 and 2 there in the golf course. Now, taking into consideration what we were told last week, that the effort, I guess, at the golf course is going to be a 2-year trial, if you will. I can't see how we could possibly entertain spending this kind of money if we're doing a 2-year trial. You're asking, we're being asked to put up $30,000 on a 2-year trial. However, this equipment, especially the sod cutter, for example, In my line of work, we rent these occasionally, not every day. So, when we rent these locally, within the town of Stoughton, the rental is $90 per day, $360 for a week, or whatever arrangement you would want to make with the rental shop. I understand from talking to people that work at golf courses that this aeration can be done by subcontractors, and I understand that there's probably people here that could give you better information than I can on that, but this is what I've heard, that there are people that go to golf courses to perform this work, probably so they don't have to make such a large expenditure. The other thing, I'd like to go down to B3, the town square plan. Mr. Kelly has a design out in the hall for a what he envisioned as a possibility of what we could do with the square. And in that, he has laid out some of the streets. He also has an interesting aspect, if you look closely, on what would be the road going right through the center of town. And he has these little cars parked there, and the parking spots are cross-hatched in one direction. And then right behind it, cross-hatched in the opposite direction, is what he's calling a rumble strip. And the idea there is that, from what Steve told me, that cars would back out of those diagonal spots onto the rumble strip, and there would still be area for regular passage of other vehicles going by. And obviously, if you can angle park and do it safely, you're going to pick up a tremendous amount of parking spots versus parallel parking. So my point there is, we've got somebody that's put a lot of effort into a plan, and to my way of thinking, that one there, the cost is right because it's free. And not to say that Steve's plan, Mr. Kelly's plan may not be the best, but it's a good starting point, and it can be tweaked probably by our engineering department, and that would save us a bit of money. Moving on, I'd like to ask a question on the E1, on the 52-inch lawn mower. It's $9,200. I understand the reason why that's so expensive. It's a riding model, I believe. So normally, being in the business myself, when you're buying a piece of equipment like this, of this caliber, that you're going to ride on, usually it's to eliminate manpower, because the piece of equipment usually will cut a larger swath and it's fast. So I guess my question would be, if I could, to the Superintendent of Public Works, is this going to cut down the labor on the Parks Department if we get this rider mower?
Mr. Batchelder.
No.
Well, I kind of expected that answer from a municipality. That's the difference between municipal and private.
Well, I bet you have more on your crew, Mr. DeFelice. My Forestry and Parks Department is 2.
Is what? I'm sorry.
2 members. 2.
Well, okay, I'll take your word for it, but I've seen more than 2 out on the parks.
I
That's
have
okay.
more in the summer.
Okay, thank you. The next thing I'd like to ask on the recreation, G2, top dress reseed field at the West School. I would wonder, wouldn't it be appropriate for the people that are using these fields to take care of the fields? So if the various teams or whatever that are not the high school teams that are playing on these fields, Pop One or whatever, why can't these outfits make a contribution to help defray the cost of the fields? Is that a possibility, Mr. Dennison?
Mr. Dennison?
Our current field use policy does not require our youth groups to pay user fees on the West School Athletic Complex. They pay a application fee only. I think over the years, and I don't want to speak for this board because it's different from previous boards, but they have felt as though in order to keep youth recreation athletics affordable, that they would not charge the user fees. The corner field that we're talking about, we redid about 6 years ago. About every 5 to 6 years, we're going to have to redo this field, top dress it, and throw down some seed. It houses or it provides practice space for high school football, for Stoughton Youth flag football, for JV and freshman baseball in the spring. It is used from March 16th or March 17th, first day of spring sports for the high school, until the end of November.
Okay.
So it's highly used, and it's a small investment to keep it playable.
Okay, thank you. And, Mr. Mayor, my last question, I want to direct to the chairman of the Finance Committee. Just going back to A1, when that came before you, was there any information as to the possibility of leasing that piece of equipment as opposed to an outright purchase?
Through you, excuse me, through you, Mr. Moderator, to the speaker. I don't know, I don't recall a discussion on leasing. So we had a presentation by the town manager and by the manager of the course, who I believe is here. But I don't know that we had a discussion about leasing.
The reason why I asked that question was because of the fact that, again, if the course doesn't perform from what we were told last week, and at the end of 2 years, if things go south, you know, a leased piece of equipment is a lot easier to turn back in than to be stuck with a $25,000 piece. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hartman, in response?
Just to clarify, leasing or contracting is not an option under the present budget. There aren't sufficient funds. The way the budget is set up is it's to be done in-house with seasonal employees. I also need to clarify, there is no 2-year limit. What the statement that was made is that we have to give this at least 2 years to see how it turns out. There is no provision for the golf course to cease at the end of 2 years.
Mr. Gator.
Dennis Gator, Precinct 3. I'd like to ask a question on lighting. First of all, is there any way we can get some more light in here tonight?
That would help.
Thank you. To Mr. Batchelder, I guess, I see that we're spending $50,000 for lighting at Halloran Field, yet we're spending $100,000 for the entire town for street lighting upgrades. My question is this part of a long-range plan? What step are we at? Are these LEDs? And is this going to be ongoing? And what is the cost savings? Thank you.
Mr. Batchelder.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This plan we instituted last year. It will continue for a number of years. Is to replace a majority of fixtures that we have in the number of them are in the Tanglewood area, the wooden posts that are 30-some-odd years old that are falling 30 at a time probably, as well as the small fiberglass ones that are no longer in the planning board regs because they don't throw out any light. So to answer your question, this will be ongoing for a number of years. It's with a LED fixture, an aluminum post, 25-footer with a 6-foot mast arm. If you're interested in looking at what they look like from last year, we've done Palisades Circle and Westview Drive has been done. They're ongoing this year with the money that you gave us last year.
What did you get last year, Mr. Batchelder?
I think it was 70,000.
And how long is the plan?
Until we take care of all of them.
Thank you.
It would depend on how much we get per year to do the fixtures.
Okay.
The rate we're going, I'd say that I will be back for the next 4 to 5 years at least.
And the significant savings with the LEDs?
Absolutely.
Mr. Mullen?
Bob Mullen, Precinct 2. Question on the Cedar Hill, the Greens aerator. Now, that's coming out of the town's funds? Is that correct? Whoever can answer that?
No, as we indicated at the last meeting,
Okay,
that will be
definitely gonna-
financed through Cedar Hill.
So that's going to be, that motion's going to be somehow changed? In the,
No, I think Bill indicated that the charge-off would be to the Cedar Hill Enterprise Fund.
Okay. All right, another question on the engineering, survey inspection vehicle. Now, is that a specialized vehicle, or is that just a vehicle for survey inspection? Just curious.
Somebody have an answer to Mr. Mullen's question?
Yeah, whoever can
Oh,
answer that, appreciate
Mr.
it.
Tisdale.
Mark Tisdale, Town Engineer. Essentially, what we have right now is a 2002 Ford Explorer. Our junior engineer goes out into the field many times per day to do inspections on the subdivision, sewer inspections, any kind of utility inspections. So this type of vehicle we're getting is in line with an SUV, but we're looking at what they call a Ford Transit Connect. It gets very good gas mileage, close to 30 miles per gallon. It can hold all the equipment we have. We have long survey rods that stay in the vehicle, shovels, things of that nature that have to stay in the vehicle. The 2002 Ford Explorer has transmission issues that Public Works Department can verify, suspension problems, body rot, and that's the big stuff. There's a lot of small things.
My only question to that is, don't we have, I don't know how many vehicles the town has, but don't we have some vehicles, instead of buying a new one, can't we just, like public safety vehicle that's no longer used, Explorer, turn it over to the engineering department?
Yeah, we've actually explored this, and there's really no vehicle available that meets those specs. There's not an SUV available. There's nothing. I've talked to John about it multiple times.
Actually, isn't this one of those vehicles?
What's that?
Isn't this a replacement vehicle already from the town's lottery?
I thought you were talking about an existing vehicle that would replace this one we already have.
But you got this vehicle from another,
We did. We got this one, I believe, for
because the old one,
fire department.
south, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We got this vehicle before I worked here.
So I'm just saying, there's not another vehicle that's being swapped out that you could, I'm just trying to save the town
I'm gonna-
$28,000, another
Yeah, I've-
department that's not a public safety, personally, I don't think we should be buying every department a new vehicle.
I mean, to be honest with you, I explored that avenue first. I went through the proper chain of command, which was John, the town manager, and there was no vehicle that met those specs that we had available. I'll let John talk about that if he wants to.
Mr. Batchelor?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, the vehicle in question that Mr. Tisdale is talking about is in such bad shape that I'm still waiting on a vehicle from last year's town meeting that's been ordered and hasn't come in, and it's been 10 months. When that vehicle comes in, the one that we have that was in such bad shape we were going to trade in or auction, I'm giving it to him so that he can use it until hopefully this good body gives him a new one. The engineering department has not had a new vehicle, well, I don't know what year, but I got to say, Charlie Stokowski was the last one that drove a new truck in that department.
Okay.
1986.
86, okay. Thank you, Mr. Batchfield. One last thing about could I ask engineering about the town square traffic implementation plan? Okay, I understand plans are plans, but here we are not having another plan. And the townspeople have to pay for another plan.
To start off, that particular item was inserted by the Board of Selectmen, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But if this Board of Selectmen wants me to speak on this, I have no problem speaking on this. Okay. So essentially what this plan does is you're right, there's probably been a handful of plans done in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And essentially it's just to get the traffic around the square. And I mean, I've seen plans with 3-lane, one-way roads going around the square. So you got vehicles, you know, probably 50, 60 miles per hour going around the square. Now with the Master Plan Committee and new policies and objectives from Mass DOT about complete streets, you know, slowing vehicles down, actually accounting for pedestrians, bicyclists, things of that nature, we need a new plan. We can't have 3-lane, one-way roads around the square. We need plans that actually will draw people to the square, but also works with the traffic flow. And everybody knows what we have right now doesn't work. So that's kind of the direction we're going with that. Also, in the back, we've got the South Coast Rail coming, and we need to work with that plan, and our new plan has to work with that plan because that will come. It's just a matter of time.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Tony Souza.
Antonio Souza, Precinct 3, and this question is for the Superintendent of Public Works. And the question is in regards to rehab the roof for the mechanic building. Is that for the total new building that was built 15 years ago or so?
No, this is the building that was built back in the early 70s. It used to be a storage facility that when we did redo the Public Works facility, the mechanics bays moved over there. So coming in the Central Street gates, the first building on the right, it's 40 some odd years old.
Is that a metal roof?
Yes.
Is that to replace the whole roof?
We're still exploring the options that we have.
And can you tell me what the square footage of that building is?
I think it's in the vicinity of 40 by 80.
30. I mean, that seems to be a lot of money. And the reason I'm saying that, I'm a part owner of a building that's 20,000 square feet. And last year, we looked to replace the whole metal roof, and we got a couple quotes between 80 and 100,000 last year. Then what we choose to do, we contacted a company that does a rubberize over the metal roof with a 3 mil thickness. Believe it or not, we had it done for $12,000 guaranteed for 10 years. And I don't know if it's an option that's worth look at it.
The 150 is for a price for rubber coating the roof. Don't forget, we pay prevailing wage.
In other words, that's just to rubberize a 3 mil over 3,200 square foot building, $150,000.
I've only got one price. I haven't gone out looking for more quotes, but
Would
that's
you
the
be
one I'm
interested-
using. I got that 2 years ago.
Would you be interested in me supplying the name of the company we had it done and look
Absolutely,
into it?
yes.
I cannot discuss whether or not it was prevailing wage or not, but I'll be happy to
Well,
supply that to
the
you.
other thing is, it's an article for the roof, so if we had it done for $50,000, then we're gonna give back the other 100.
Oh, I
I'm not
understand
gonna
that,
spend
but
it, so.
I hate to have us approve $150,000 right up front. I understand if it doesn't get used, it gets returned, but I think it's something that's worth exploring.
Absolutely.
Thank you, I'll provide that information.
Thank you.
And that was in the, under F, for the police chief. Is these defibrillators that you like to purchase, is that to replace old ones or new ones we want to add to what we already have?
That's to replace the ones we got. The life cycle is 8 years, and these are over 10 years old.
Okay, and that's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Mr. Lurie.
Thank you. David Lurie, Precinct 6. I have a question, Mr. Moderator. Is there an individual petitioner for item D for Article 27, or is it pretty much there's one petitioner for all the items listed in Article 27?
This is a composite. Under the, for the several years, town meeting has been looking to have a real capital outlay program. And this is the result of the combination and coordination of the town manager to come up with a basic plan, and this is a plan that would cover this year.
Is the town manager responsible for item D, integrated financial software?
I'd have to ask the town manager.
Yes.
Okay. It was kind of interesting at the last meeting last Thursday. I had some problems with the salaries not being mentioned in the section on salaries, and I was asked to go grab on the table out in the hallway the annual report, and I scoured this thing up and front to back twice. It took me a lot of time to do it, only to find out that the numbers were not really adequate to what that exercise was. But what was interesting, Mr. Moderator, is that it was like a blessing in disguise. I had a question about item D with $900,000 budgeted, adjusted down to $750,000. I said, what on earth could cost that much money to improve the finances of the town in way of technology? And I found some interesting information in this book. It starts off with the HR department mentioning, I'll quote, in the last paragraph of their summary, it says, the department looks forward to the installation of the next level of HR software and further improvement in our technology. So I guess the first question is Mr. Moderator, to whoever wants to answer this, is this HR software part of the integrated financial software? And if so, why isn't it mentioned as HR software?
Mr. Hartman.
That would be among the modules we are looking at, but we have an agreement, a 2-year agreement that town meeting approved some years ago relative to a payroll package that includes an HR component.
So the HR component is already budgeted from a previous town meeting?
From a previous article, yes.
So that's already, the HR component is already funded?
No, it's never, yes, but never been purchased.
Okay, so furthermore, there's also a group of teams, it looks like.
I need to correct, I've just been informed it was not funded. That part was not funded, just the payroll piece was.
Okay, so coming back to my question then, HR is a module that's going to be part of the financial software in this budget of $750,000.
In the budget of $750,000, you have utilities, finance and taxation, revenues.
No, that's not my question. I apologize. Mr. Moderator, my question to the town manager is the HR module part of the budget of $750,000?
Correct. It is.
Thank you. It came to my attention also in this annual report that there are several groups that I never heard of before, where there's a town's financial cabinet, there's a town's budget team, there's a town's insurance review panel, and apparently they all collaborate to just try to uncover what's needed for the town. There's one person that's mentioned in this called the internal auditor. Is this internal auditor someone that is involved on the finance committee? Or is it somebody, can somebody help me understand who that person is?
Mr. Hartman.
Oh, okay.
This
So
is
we
the
ha-
internal auditor.
Okay.
She is an employee of the town. She does from time to time appear before the finance committee. She is also a member of the budget team and a member of the finance team, actually.
Got it, okay. It says here in the internal audit department section of this annual report that the internal auditor established a working relationship with KVS Accounting in order to facilitate the conversion from KVS Standard to KVS Enterprise Collections. Is this the software that's referred to in item D?
No, what you have in the annual report is a summary of persons' activities. What we have discovered is the KVS software has been sold to a different company and will no longer be maintained. So as I indicated to you Wednesday night after the meeting, we are going to have to change our software one way or the other.
All right, so basically...
And I will point out, and I'm certain that both folks from the school and from the town accountant's office will point out that our current software, which is KVS, which has now been purchased by Springbrook, is not integrated.
Got it. So if after the fact that KVS was acquired by Springbrook, is Springbrook forcing our hand to become an enterprise collections customer of theirs? Or is this an option that we could either stay with Standard or move to enterprise?
We currently use a different vendor for our utilities. I assume that's what you mean for enterprise.
It says here, KVS Enterprise Collections. Yeah.
What this is about, very simply, is that the accountant's office was using one version of KVS. The treasurer collector's office was using another version of KVS. So what we set out to do at the beginning of the year was to get them on the same version. Mid-year, we discovered that we could not do that because KVS was not going, actually they are on the same version now, but they're not going to maintain it anymore.
All right, so does this budget include an upgrade from Standard to enterprise at any level within?
The 750 includes a complete new software package that would include utilities, HR, finance, and taxation. Am I missing one? I said utilities, and I believe permitting.
What changed, okay, in the town, there was reference to some inaccuracies within this summary. It talked a lot about inefficiency, talked about...
Are you back to the
it's talked
internal
about
auditor?
human error in doing some of the reporting. Can somebody quantify how much
I will
cost-
let, you're
Yeah.
referring to the internal auditor's
Yes,
report.
yes.
Through the moderator, I will let her address that directly.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, through you, when you have different softwares doing different things, you have to have human intervention to switch it from one software to the other. Everything needs to end up in KVS officially, because that's what the state looks at. That's what the law is. We need an official set of books. However, in the back of that, getting up to that point, we don't have the same software. We have a different software for water, sewer, and trash. We have a different software for payroll. We've had a different software for another thing. Every single time you have a different software at the back end of your major, you need a human being to switch it from one to another or to repost it in a manual fashion. That's what happens. Our entire water, sewer, trash module is reposted manually to the KVS system. That's what we're
I
trying to
understand.
get away from.
Thank you for that. Mr. Moderator, to this current speaker, have you determined how much inefficiency there is? Have you quantified how much lost time, productivity, how much errors have been made? Have we fallen out of compliance in any time that we've done this current KVS technology over, let's say, the last decade?
Through you, Mr. Moderator, we have not fallen out of compliance, to my knowledge. There is a great deal of human effort that goes into our entire accounting finance area. I have not quantified it. It's arduous. It takes a great deal of tenacity to stick with it. It's tough. I can't describe it any other way. Personally, I'm coming from a town that has had a very poor integrated system where everything talked to each other, and it was far better than what we have here. So I'm saying,
But at some point, excuse me, Mr. Moderator, to the speaker, has anybody ever connected the added cost to move to this new technology against the cost and aggravation involved with running the status quo of what you have in place? Is there any quantifiable evidence that this investment is worth saving your team the aggravation of putting that in place?
I need to repeat, we can't keep the status quo in place. We are going to have to convert.
No, I asked this, excuse me, Mr. Moderator, but I've asked the town manager, has anybody from Springbrook forced us to make this upgrade? The answer was no. The answer was, we can keep using the standard technology in the same model that we currently have. It's just a matter of who the owner of this new technology company happens to be.
That is not correct.
You're saying that they are forcing us...
We are going to have to convert to Springbrook at some point in time.
That's not my question. My question is are we forced to spend $750,000
Mr. Laurie,
during this acquisition?
we're coming very close to your 10
Yeah.
minutes. Mr. Murphy, are you ready?
All
I'll
right,
give you one more
I
minute- I'll give you
can't
1
seem
minute
to get the
wind
answer
up.
I'm trying to get to. I guess what I'm trying to say is to the members here is that we always try to focus on the goals that this town set forth in many of the meetings about the direction our town's going, and it's always been around image, it's been around safety. I don't know many towns I've ever driven into, and I don't know how many other people have driven through a town and said, wow, look at this town. They must have some amazing enterprise technology software to run their finances. And that's all I have to say.
Mr. Murphy.
Just for clarification, on the item F, the external defibrillators, municipal operations voted to approve that, not disapprove that. That's a typographical error. For the police department, they were looking for external defibrillators at a cost of $35,000. On page 87, it says that municipal operations disapproved. We approved that. So that's just a clarification. On the other page, on the next page, 89, it shows us that we approved it. It was a typo. Thank you.
Mr. Hanson.
I'm going to be as brief as possible on that, back to the integrated financial software. I can understand that there's a great deal of aggravation to try to get these 3 or 4 systems compatible, and so every time you have to spend a human resource there. But if we'll say totally, for example, that person that does all the juggling there to get it all compatible and on a piece of paper that's decipherable, and if we paid him $75,000 a year, it would be 10 years, that person would be employed for 10 years. This $900,000 or $750,000, I think it'll probably be obsolete in 3 years, and we'll be back here it again, and well, you know, they no longer support this one, and it's, you know, it works under a different environment than Windows or 8.2 or 88.8 or something like that, and we're gonna need a new software program for another $1 million. So I agree with the previous speaker. That's a frightful amount of money to spend for something that's gonna last 3 years, when if we had somebody doing it by hand, it'd be the last 10 years.
Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bill Rowe, Town Accountant. Our office is in the trenches on this. I was the one that converted the KVS software over from a manual input system in 2002. The system had been bought in 1998. And because of turnover in the accountant's office, we weren't able to make that happen. KVS is on the municipal side. It's not operated on the school side. We use that for accounts payable processing, checks, purchasing, and it's interfaced with the tax collector's office for tax collection. Works like a charm. Utility billing. Utility billing is operated at the Public Works with a different software system. They send out the bills and through that, and they type up what's called a commitment letter. A commitment letter is the total of all the bills that are sent out. It's sent over to our office. We post it manually. You go to reconcile, it's close, doesn't come out right to what's posted in the utility system. The abatements are written up by hand, sent over to our office, and we post them manually. You look and compare that to what's in the utility system. It's close, doesn't come out. The payments are posted in the collector's office into the system, and then a handwritten sheet is sent to our office with the cash collections. It's close, doesn't come out exactly right. So, you know, you can imagine how hard it is to reconcile this at the end of the year. School billing system. School has a different accounting system. They process their checks and their AP there. So I have taxpayers, committee reps come into my office and say, hey, can you tell me how much the school department spent last year on so-and-so? I said, well, no, I can't. Well, what do you mean you can't? Aren't you the town accountant? I said, well, I can go through 26 batches of bills and pull out the voucher details and look at each one and see how much they spent. Can't look it up in the system. Payroll. Payroll is an outsourced payroll processing service. Okay? The department head will list all the employees and their deductions and so forth, and that's input into the payroll service. On the other side of the sheet, they will summarize the account numbers to be posted to, and we will post that into the system. So if I wanted to, say, conceal some overtime and have a vacant clerical position line, I can tell the accountant, post that overtime into that vacant clerical position line. The employees aren't linked to a particular expenditure account. So this is going to be, you know, many, many hours for our office outside of business hours, outside of business hours that we already spend, particularly in the fall. But if I can survive it without a nervous breakdown and come out the other end, it's going to be a much more efficient system for the town. We won't have to reconcile with the school department. Reconciliation will be easier with Public Works for utilities. And we'll have other things like parking tickets, building permits, everything will be interfaced. So I don't usually speak in favor of these things, but I just wanted to give the members a sense of the work that we have to go through to try to reconcile these various systems. So just something to think about. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Is it directly to answer or respond to? Is this in response to Mr. Rowe's question?
It's about procedure.
No, it's over there. Mr. Rock.
Yeah, hi. John Rock, Precinct 3, not 2. I don't know who spread that rumor, but... I just very briefly, I want to speak in support of the new software. It's long overdue. None of the town departments can speak to each other financially. You can't come up with a unified budget. You can't come up with a unified payroll. There's all kinds of delays in getting financial reports to the various committees and to you folks because of you have to make manual adjustments. Hey, we could go back to keeping the old manual ledger systems, and then we'd never have to update. We could go back to doing that. But at any rate, this is something that's been identified as almost the number one need for the efficient operations of the town. We hired a consultant, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, and this was at the top of the list. An integrated software system for the town. It's not going to be outdated in 3 years. It might need an update or something, but you're not going to have to replace it. The old company is not going to meet our needs. It's time to make this move. It's going to save countless man-hours. Maybe it's not as sexy as other purchases. It's not going to directly save lives, except maybe the town accountant and a couple other people. But I think it's long overdue. This is a very, very important way to modernize the town's operations. Thank you.
Mr. Souza. Soares. I got the nationality right.
Joe Soares, Precinct 2, School Committee. I have just been talking to Mr. Rowe this morning, or this afternoon, and he couldn't give me any help because the school side does not talk to the town side. This software is extremely overdue. The amount of professional work or manual work that has to be done is tremendous. I agree on this particular article. Thank you.
Mr. Gito.
Let me be very brief. I think I was in the Board of Selectmen in the late 90s when we got some of the software. We were not going to go very far because it was difficult to get people to want to work to have integrated systems. We have spent, just by the way, I think 76 years old, I'm not sure. So I'm not a young person. I am amazed that we would spend a half an hour talking about having an integrated information system dealing with personnel and dealing with finances for an $81 million budget. And Lord knows how many other articles for several $1 million that we're dealing with, that all of us here ask questions about. Well, how much are we spending on this? How do these things compare with last year? Maybe we should have an abacus so we wouldn't even think of asking the questions. People have stood up here and talked for a half an hour on various articles. Usually, when someone stands up,
Mr. Gito.
They are interested in talking about issues. Yes?
Mr. Gito, you're not to reprimand this party.
Oh, I'll try very hard not to do that. Usually when people stand up, they're interested in finding out something in order to make a change in the budget so that we can move on and act on that. What we've done for the last half hour is just talk to one another. I'm sorry. This is just so upsetting. Thank you.
We have some people down here. Mrs. Hill. Is it with regard to something? No, that's out of order. I just said, that's why I made my comments before. Mrs. Hill.
Anita Hill, Precinct 2. I just want to give you a little bit of comparison. We're talking a $750,000 price tag on conversion to an upgrade townwide IT system. I work in a small company. We have anywhere between $10 and $12 million in sales. We just did a conversion for that small company for $420,000. Granted, it was very similar to what Mr. Rowe was saying about where everything prior was manually entered, and that was me. It was all manual journal entries, and fingers get crossed, and you do transpositions with your eyeballs, and that's how mistakes happen or don't get done. As far as payroll is concerned, there's not only the privacy compliance, but the correct pay. We're dealing with unions, we're dealing with non-unions. It's all integrated. 750 is not a bad, and this is equipment and software, correct? Hardware and software? Because we had to buy new computers too. It's not just the software, it's hardware to support it. Hardware and software?
It's primarily software and the hours involved in conversion. Conversion alone will take anywhere from 6 to 10 months.
And training.
Correct, and the training.
There's a lot of it, there's a lot involved. It's not just a disk that you put into a computer. I support this article.
Mrs. Colburn.
I just want to say that we were concerned about the dollar amount of this as well. The people came and gave a day-long demonstration to the department heads, just going over all the various modules and what this software does. And I was invited and I attended for the Finance Committee so that I could see for myself what exactly is involved in this. And every single one of the department heads that was there loved it. The people who attended that meeting were very excited at the idea that we could finally get all the communications, the modules to talk to each other. We could have school and town talk to each other. Things that are done almost on a manual basis in the town hall can now be automated with this system. I mean, it's excellent. Everybody loved it. I was very excited about the budgeting component. Little things make me happy, but you could actually go in and project that so-and-so is going to retire, and this is how much sick time we need to, pay that person. So I just think it was excellent. Everybody seemed to love it, and I was thrilled. One other thing I want to mention is that it's very adaptable. If we have other systems that we need to bring the information into Munis, as long as it can print out an Excel spreadsheet, we can upload that data into the system. And as far as upgrades, you do not pay upgrade fees unless I'm mistaken. There are no upgrades once we're involved in this system. If they give us upgrades, we do not have to pay for them. So I think it's excellent, and I would highly recommend it. Thank you.
Mr. Linehan.
John Linehan, Precinct 1. This sounds very necessary and needed, but in hearing all the descriptions of the efficiencies being gained, I'm wondering how many people we're going to be able to reduce town hall staffing by. Is there a projection? Because, it only seems to go one way, but we obviously will be getting some great efficiencies here and great improvements, but as we all know, staffing goes one way, and it sounds like we will save literally thousands of hours a year after it's uploaded, after it's online.
Mr. Ventresco.
Peter Ventresco, Precinct 8. It was only a few years back we appropriated a good sum of money for software for different departments. And the problem was why we never got onto one system was that most department heads were hung up on certain software, and the next department wanted a different software, so it never got integrated. So this here's a lot of money, but if it's going to bring everybody together and save time and do it right, I think we should do it.
Mr. Blacker.
Jeff Blacker, Precinct 2, move to question.
To cut off debate. On the motion to cut off debate, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed. You cut off debate on the entire Article 27. And it was requested that we go through and vote each recommendation as printed in your book. And they need to get to the right pages. It's in your handout. It was also in the report, Finance Committee report. Mr. Gito, well, we have a second. I can't hear you up here. Yes.
Could we reconsider going through each of those items one by one? Does anybody else want to do that? I mean, we want to spend an hour doing this one at a time? One at a time. Okay.
Okay. Mr. Laurie, very brief.
The way I understood the motion is that all discussion would end, so that it's just voting, no more discussion. So I don't see that much time here.
So it's going to probably take more. Okay, here's the sum and substance. The report was prepared two different ways, and once again, you have made the choice that you want to take a vote on each one of these. Now, that means I'm going to have to pull out a few more pieces of paper to keep account. Yes. Please make it clear. Just
The motion that I made was to vote on Article 27, item A, then item B, then item C as printed. Yeah, right, so we...
okay. The way
The only exception to that was we did vote for the ambulance, so that's already been approved.
no,
Amend it to include it.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Colburn.
No.
I don't know how you do that.
I just don't understand what we're supposed to read. What we have printed is one motion for the total dollar amount. If you scrap that, what we also have printed in the motion handout is a positive recommendation for each of the FinCom approved ones. We have nothing written that we can give you that says A and give you the wording of the motion. Some of these all have different funding sources. We can't just reinvent the wheel at this stage. I, honest to God, don't know what we're supposed to read to you as a motion. If we do A, what would that motion be? I just totally...
We wouldn't read it. We don't have it.
We wouldn't read it. I guess Mr. Hill is right. We would not read that. Somebody, if you're going to do A, B, C, D, somebody has to come up with what those motions are to read it to us, because we don't have that anywhere. We have motions for the total, so we could give you that. Total with or without the ambulance, we could give you that. We can give you motions for the individual items that FinCom approved. We don't have motions written for A, B, C, D. We don't have motions written for things that were not approved by FinCom. So we're out of this. Somebody else has to come up with what these motions are. I'm totally lost. Thank you.
Now, the only thing that I would see different from that main motion is inclusion of the thing where we just changed the amount for the ambulance. This would be the same way, and all the citations have been the same. Now, the only difference is, in some of these things, you'd have to separate out in that motion the total amounts being transferred from free cash, plus the things that we're borrowing.
Mr.
Right.
Moderator, let me modify my motion, that if we take it, if everybody agrees the way that it's printed, including the ambulance, as written in the handout, right? If it passes, fine. If it doesn't pass, then we go step by step.
All right, I'm gonna yield a minute to town council, because many a times bond counsel wants a record of one or two particular things. So I'm going to ask his advice, because this is the first time we've done something of this magnitude. Mr. Fair.
Just to make it complicated.
No, he doesn't need it. He said it, that's why we didn't vote for it. He said, Peter, he said he could go another year, no problem. There's only 110,000 here that's being paid for free cash. Why is it not noted here that there's $100,000 for the street traffic to Town Square? This is 100,000 here. It's not borrowing. It's actually free cash 100,000. Item B, Town Square traffic. Yeah. That's free cash, not borrowing. Yeah, see? Right. And this one, G, that's free cash. Gee, the top dress seat. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna move to amend to increase the moderator's stipend by 60,000.
Yeah, yeah.
I think by his own rule. Yes, we do. We've got most of them. We already did one. Well, we did one. There are three more that we need.
Now, let's see how this,
And that's all in the hand.
yeah. This is, you're talking, these would be the total amounts, that's the way this is
Yeah.
essentially.
It's the same. It's what you have. Plus, obviously.
So we would do, so in my here, I would take this whole thing, Cedar Hill, 27, one vote for 27. Yeah. Okay, I would go on
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna say, let the motion go the way we put it. That's right.
that.
go back to the way we were before my motion and how we got there. I don't want that change.
I think what we could do is, so that's the original, that's the ambulance, that's the free cash, that's the profit. So could we say that, you know, $1 million total appropriation of $1,877,770, $110,000 free cash, and the balance to be borrowed. The top dress and receiving. So 110,000 free cash and sleeves. You know what I mean, Cynthia? Balance from borrowing. That would kill it. That would get it all out.
Now's the time to get some coffee and donuts before we come back.
Because some of them are cash.
What they're doing, what they're going to do, is the way this thing is originally presented.
That's why they're asking for the lawyers to sort it out.
A,
And then it all gets to the road. So they'll charge so much to see you. They'll charge so much to water, so much to see you, so much to school. The bank is so much. Each one of these recommendations says what the mix is. Some of it say borrow, some of it say cash, some of it straight.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I know. They're crazy, yeah. No, they're nuts. They had riots, they've had riots before. Yeah.
Back my second real fast, I don't know what that is.
just moved it one time. Yeah, IRA, yeah.
I got, wait a minute, E, 290,000. E's is all, well, all right, just make sure,
Table it, to table it?
yes. And 27. One vote now. All right.
Yeah, but for a total of A is this, B is this, right? Yes.
I got some already. Yeah. No, thank you. Okay. On your original handouts,
Are you getting the
just so
106 plus the 250?
you get an overview. Everything we're going to do this in the groups. First of all, we'll take a vote on A, Cedar Hill, for the total of 30,000. B, for engineering, 136,000. We're going to read the detail, but is a summary. Then we're going to take a vote on C2 and 4, which is 85,000. We've already taken the vote on C1. That's going to stay as is. D will be a vote on 750,000. E will be on a total of 290,000, just only on the approved items. Then F will be 200 on 276,270. And G, recreation, for 60,000. So that each group, each department will get one vote, even though we read it as what was printed in all of these recommendations. Now, the next part, if we can do this and make some of these unanimous, I won't have to have you stand. However, it would be my preference that we take account, you need the exercise, and I need to get my thumbs greased. Now, are you people ready to do addition? I'm talking to our ladies up front here. All right, because I don't want to be, that's why I requested a printing calculator up here. Is it going to be very?
What's the question? We're ready to go.
I'm ready to. All right, now, I'm going to read, I'll read it, Article 27A. Then Mr. Hill will read the combined motion for the total amount, and then the actual detail, just so that it's read into the record. It's very important that we have this stuff read into the record.
So, Mr. Moderator, just to be clear, did you want me to read the dollar amount first or the articles first?
You read, for example, A, Cedar Hill, 30,000.
And then the two supporting
Then the
articles?
two things.
Okay.
All right?
I'm ready. A, Cedar Hill, $30,000 to borrow.
All right.
And now I'm going to read those two recommendations below it that incorporate that, or are we just going to go each one by each one?
You're gonna read the two together.
Okay, here we go. Article 27A, 1, recommendation that the town vote to appropriate $25,000 to purchase the
All
Greens
right, now to save a few ink and words, just cut all that stuff out about that the town vote. We're doing it now. It's just to appropriate, okay? Okay. Go ahead.
Well, it says that the town vote to appropriate. Is that the wrong language?
Just take, we're doing it. We're the town. We're voting it. Just say,
All right, to
Article 20
appropriate $25,000 to purchase a
Yep.
greens aerator for Cedar Hill Golf Course, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $25,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 9, or any other enabling authority. Article 27A2, to appropriate $5,000 to purchase a sod cutter for the Cedar Hills Golf Course, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $5,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 9, or any other enabling authority.
that's on the motion. If it's not unanimous, then I'll have you take account. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It is unanimous. That's voice vote.
B, engineering.
Now, wait a minute, all right. Yep, go to it. Engineering.
B, engineering, $136,500. Article 27B1, to appropriate $28,000 to purchase a survey inspection vehicle for the engineering department, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $28,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 9, or any other enabling authority. Article 27B2, to appropriate $8,500 to purchase a total station survey instrument for the engineering department, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $8,500 under the Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 9, Section 7, Paragraph 9, or any other enabling authority. Article 27B3, to appropriate $100,000 to pay for the cost of preparing the town square traffic improvement plan for the engineering department, and to meet this appropriation, $100,000 be transferred from free cash.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. Okay, you please rise and the chairman will take account. All those in favor? This makes it all fair, don't have to come back and do it again. Precinct 1.
6.
Precinct 1 is 6. Precinct 2. 16. Precinct 2 is 16. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 11. Precinct 4. 16. Precinct 4 is 16. Precinct 5. 11. Precinct 5 is 11. Precinct 6. 12. Precinct 6 is 12. Precinct 7. 7. Precinct 7 is 7. Precinct 8. 8 is 7. You got a total for those? Yes. Just give me, do you have it?
Bless you. Sorry.
All those opposed, please rise. Chairman, take account. Precinct 1.
2.
Precinct 1 is 2. Precinct 2. 2. Precinct 2 is 2. 3. 2. Precinct 3 is 2. 4. 0. 4 is 0. Precinct 5. 0. Precinct 5, 0. Precinct 6. 3. Precinct 6 is 3. Precinct 7. 1. Precinct 7 is 1. Precinct 8. 3. 8 is 3.
Mr. Moderator, question?
Not yet. Don't interrupt anything. regarding...
Just to expedite things and save the chairman of the Finance Committee's throat, could he
No.
say, as
No.
as written in the warrant?
No, we have to read these things into the record,
Thank you.
okay? I know that would be the expedient thing to do.
It's been
but
such
no.
a day at the beach.
Precinct, all those, what's the total?
right.
Yeah. I can tell you what the no is. How many? The motion carries. 86 yes, 13 no. Approved. Now let me go on to the next piece of paper. All right, I'm going to have to borrow something here. You know, give me 1 second. I have to have a record sheet here. Okay. And the amount is, are we ready to do, this is 27C2 and 27C4. Is that correct, Mr. Hill?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think you have a point of information on the floor, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Lurie.
Based on your best judgment, you have some numbers based on that last vote. In your judgment, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do. It's very simple. There were more than, add the two together. 993 and whatever, 13. Whatever the number was. I go on another page. We do have a quorum. I would have announced that if it wasn't. No, you did that.
It's already
I
done.
made that very, very clear, that we made that motion individually, and because we're breaking this down, that vote was made. That's all done and over with. That.
Mr. Moderator, if I'm correct, I think we're going to include that amount in the total when we reread the total motion
When we
again.
read the final, yeah.
Okay. Item C,
Yep.
fire rescue, $85,000. Article 27C2, to appropriate $40,000 to upgrade townwide fire alarms for the fire rescue department, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $40,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 14, or any other enabling authority. Article 27C4, to appropriate $45,000 to upgrade radios for the fire rescue department, and to meet that appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $45,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 9, or any other enabling authority.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, I will declare it unanimous, and the motion carries. Now,
Bless you.
we're on 27D, right?
D, information technology, $750,000. 27D, to appropriate $750,000 to purchase integrated financial software for the Information Systems Department, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $750,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 29, or any other enabling authority.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. All those in favor, please rise. The chairman to... It is required, and that's why I explained, if you're going to goof off, it's going to take longer. But you do have a right to vote no, and you have a right to have it recorded as present, and that's why you're here. So I gave you the opportunity, and that's what it is. Precinct 1.
8.
Precinct
And that was
1.
unanimous.
I don't, precinct, no, you don't declare that now. Precinct 2. 8.
Unanimous.
Precinct 2 is 17. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 13. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 16. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 11. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 14. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 9. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 10. All those opposed, please rise. Precinct 1. Precinct 1 is 0. Precinct 2. One abstention. All right. Precinct 3. Precinct 3 is 0. Precinct 4. Precinct 4 is 0. Precinct 5. Precinct 5 is 0. Precinct 6. Precinct 6 is 1. Precinct 7. Precinct 7 is 0. Precinct 8. Precinct 8 is 0. What do you have? I'm going to make that request. Bring that printing calculator next time. I might want to have a tape.
186. No, it's 187.
So there are actually 100 people there. It's 98 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstention.
That's why this is.
No.
I have to appropriate the whole amount.
No, we have a tie for between the zeros and the ones. All right. It's voted. It's voted.
Was it 98? Was the count 98, 1 and 1, Mr. Moderator?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, now we go into 27E, Public Works, which is...
E, Public Works, $290,000. 27E2, that the town appropriate $40,000 to purchase a GMC three-quarter-ton cab and chassis for the Public Works Department. And to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $40,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 9, Paragraph 9, or any other enabling authority. Article 27-4E, that the town, to appropriate $150,000 to rehabilitate the roof of the Mechanics Building at the Public Works Department, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $150,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 3A, or any other enabling authority. Article 27-5, that the town vote to appropriate $100,000 to upgrade street lighting to the Public Works Department, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $100,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 14, or any other enabling authority.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I declare it unanimous.
(27F), Mr. Moderator?
All right, now we're doing 28E. 27F.
27F, Police, $276,270. To appropriate $35,000 to purchase 15 external defibrillators for the police department, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $35,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 9, or any other enabling authority. 27.
27. All right, all those in favor, please rise, and the chairman take account of. Okay.
I
I
have
want
one
to
more.
see
I
everybody
have one.
stand.
I have one more to read, Mr. Moderator, under
Oh, all right.
27F.
Oh,
My
I thought you
apologies.
you took a break.
Yep. Nope. I
All
should
right.
have.
All right.
To
Forget all that stuff.
to appropriate $241,270 to purchase 5 marked vehicles for the police department, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $241,270 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 9, or any other enabling authority.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Once again, I declare that unanimous. It's approved. Now, Article 27G.
27G, lighting, $50,000 to borrow and $10,000 from free cash. To appropriate $50,000 to upgrade existing lighting and install new lighting at Harlan Park for the Recreation Department. And to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $50,000 under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7, Paragraph 25, or any other enabling authority. Article 27G2, to appropriate $10,000 to pay for the cost of top dressing, reseeding the West School Field for the Recreation Department, and to meet this appropriation, $10,000 be transferred from free cash.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I declare it unanimous. 1022. Yes. Mr. D.
Yeah. No.
No,
One-
maybe we might clean up something here.
We got one more. The total summary. Our
Okay. Okay, just. So we just got to add 7. Ah. What's your total? Okay. Ah. Oh, yeah, the borrowing, you're going to appropriate 1867, right, and borrow how much? 17,770. And transfer 10,000, right? 110,000. Okay. Yes. If you've got a little pen and want to exercise, if your copy of the procedural main motion, Mr. Hill will give you the numbers as we're replacing it.
And understand this total does include the ambulance. To appropriate the sum of $1,000,000 $1,867,770. $1,867,770. That's what I said, isn't it? 187. But it's taken, okay, all right, I got it. Yep. My apologies, we were 10,000 off. So the number, no, this is the total amount of the article. So it composed of total borrowing and cash together in one number. So it is 1,877,770.
Well, I did have that.
Oh, we're not done yet. I'm going to read the rest of the motion. So it's to appropriate the sum of $1,877,770 to replace and or purchase those general capital outlay items listed and recommended by the Committee on Finance and Taxation in Article 27, ID 27, that the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $1,767,770, $1,767,770 under the various provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, as applicable, and to transfer $110,000 from free cash to fund each of the following items, as printed in the warrant.
Yeah. Come to the microphone.
Clarification purposes, what I heard Mr. Hill just say is to borrow as printed in the FinCom recommendations in the article. That does not include the ambulance, which was not a recommended article. So I'm not sure if he needs to amend that to add the ambulance into that motion, Mr. Hill. If you want to read back the motion, it didn't include it. It said as printed in, as recommended by the Finance Committee. So I think that that needs to be changed.
Yeah, and as, also as amended by town meeting. I think that. Right after it says Committee on Finance and Taxation, and as amended by town meeting. All right. I got to read this after I get through with it.
Do you want me to reread it?
Yep.
To appropriate the sum of $1,877,770 to replace and or purchase those general capital outlay items listed and recommended by the Committee on Finance and Taxation as amended by town meeting in Article 27, ID 27, that the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, be authorized to borrow $1,767,770 under the various provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 44, as applicable, and to transfer $110,000 from free cash to fund each of the following items.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It is voted. You all understand what we just did? Good, you're doing better than I thought. It's coming. What's that? That's unanimous.
We've still got 2 minutes.
I will go along with that. All those in favor of adjourning till Wednesday? All those opposed? Okay, you can stay. It should be an should be an article by department. Please bring your attendance forms.
From Jamie, what I can do is keep it, and that way if someone else needs one, I can ask John to bring one.
Hey, Ed?
Call me, couldn't find them anywhere in the house, but I know it.
We don't write the articles.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
They were handed to us that way, and we voted that way. Well, that's your opinion, Ed.
How you doing, Chief?
Complaining about how long town meeting takes. As long as this took, we should have, but, well, you know what, because somebody had one issue with the ambulance. That was it. I know, but they talked for hours, but they still voted. One person voted against it.